in terms the way Augustus and Agrippa did. He could be very direct. And in fact, he is very direct. He says flat out, Nero is my heir and my successor. Now, this grant of multiple priesthoods that Nero receives is a well-documented pattern followed by other emperors before Claudius and after. And it starts with the precedent of Agrippa. Agrippa then dies. Right after he adopts Tiberius, Augustus bestows multiple priesthoods on Tiberius as well to mark him out as a future partner. Augustus dies, Tiberius becomes emperor. Tiberius follows the same pattern, first with Germanicus, who dies, and then with Drusus the Younger, who also dies. After the death of Drusus the Younger, Tiberius begins endowing the sons of Germanicus. He turns against them and imprisons them. But he is poisoned against them by Sejanus. It was widely assumed by Sejanus and by others that Tiberius was planning on making Sejanus his full partner, for which reason he gave Sejanus multiple priesthoods. This is in Dio. You can catch it in there. I'm looking for the reference for you. 58.7.4, I think. This critical passage in Dio affirms the pattern. Now, Tiberius is actually setting Sejanus up for the fall. He gives him the multiple priesthood so that Sejanus will think he's going to be the heir and get caught off guard. Then he takes him down and kills him. Nevertheless, he then does the same thing for Caligula, the other son of Germanicus, giving him multiple priesthoods. So, one final coin I think belongs in this collection. So we'll go forwards. In 13, Augustus reminted a coin almost identical to one I showed you before from the Ludi Seculares in 17. On the original issue, two men sacrifice a sow in an age-old rite of peace. This rite dates back to the very foundings of Rome when Romulus and Titus Tatius made a peace treaty to end the war over the Sabine women. This is mentioned in Livy, and in fact, Virgil in Aeneid 8.639-41 talks about this very peace rite. He says, "Next, the kings, still armed, but now that the quarrel between them had been set aside, stood before the altar of Jupiter holding bowls, and they were making a pact over a sacrificed sow." Now, this coin of 17 supposedly commemorates a 500-year-old peace treaty. Now, I think any Romans looking at that original coin would remember Agrippa and Augustus sacrificing the sow on May 28th. Now we come forward to this coin in 13, which looks very different, but I think it has a slightly different meaning. When Agrippa and Augustus returned from the provinces, the Senate voted to build the Areopagus. Part of that ceremony to inaugurate the Areopagus included the sacrifice of a sow. That's what I think we see on this coin. Here we have two Romans, just like the other image, sacrificing a pregnant sow, not to the mother goddess Tellus, but to peace. And I think these two men can only be Augustus and Agrippa. So yet again, we have another scene of Agrippa acting as Augustus's equal in 13 BC, now that he has Tribunician Potestas, Maius Imperium, and everything else. Okay, so imagine now, briefly, if Augustus dies in 13 or 12 or 11 BC, Agrippa has everything he needs to become the new emperor and to look around for his own partner. Okay? He has all the sacral authority, all the political authority, and the dignitas and the auctoritas that somebody needs. So Augustus is ready to start a new world order. What goes wrong is that Agrippa drops dead unexpectedly. Agrippa's death in 12, and we can go forwards to the next one. Agrippa's death in 12 blew apart Augustus's plans for a new constitutional settlement of two emperors and two consuls every year. In the next few years, Augustus turned first to Tiberius and Drusus, but Drusus died on campaign in Germany in 9, and Tiberius possessed a sour disposition. Eventually, it became clear that Augustus intended to use Tiberius merely as a stabilizer until Gaius and Lucius were old enough. At that point, they would help him run the state, and Tiberius would be pushed aside. Now, whether this was Augustus's plan all along, or whether he slowly decided, Tiberius is too sour for me, we'll never know. But once Tiberius came to understand that was what was going on, he got angry and he quit Rome. He insisted on retiring to Rhodes, against Augustus's wishes, very much the way Agrippa had gone to Mytilene. Eventually, through a long chain of events, complicated though they are, Gaius and Lucius both died first, and Augustus had no choice but to bring Tiberius back. At this point, he adopted Tiberius, he enrolled him in the top religious colleges, he gave him Tribunician Potestas, and for all practical purposes, Tiberius was the junior partner But we never see Tiberius on coinage like this one. This was minted for Agrippa's funeral. Augustus on one side, Agrippa with his double crown is on the other. It looks a lot like the other one, but the names here are different. Okay? So there are a number of coins minted for Agrippa's funeral. This is one of them. And Tiberius never achieves this level of status that we see on coins. And Augustus makes a lot of biting remarks about Tiberius late. He says something to the Senate such as, well, since fate so cruelly took from me my sons Gaius and Lucius, I got stuck with Tiberius, so now Tiberius and I are passing this decree to you. Things like this. He damns him with very faint praise. He would have much rather had Agrippa as his partner. Now, there are several other posthumous issues of Agrippa I wish to bring up. For the 50th anniversary of Naulochos in AD 14, Augustus may have planned it, but Tiberius is the one who minted it. There was a celebratory issue featuring Agrippa. And here we have Agrippa on both sides. Here he is with his one of the two crowns. I think this one's the rostral crown, not the mural. And here he is, either Neptune, probably, holding a dolphin, or Agrippa is the guise of Neptune. But I think it really is Neptune because of the trident. This is a dig at Sextus Pompey, who liked Neptune. So Tiberius minted the celebratory issue. There's another one for the 50th anniversary of Actium. And at the end of his life, Tiberius is planning to issue a 50th anniversary of Agrippa's death on coinage. Now, he died, so he didn't put it out. But, we'll go to the next coin. Caligula did. So, and you'll see how similar this looks to the previous one. Agrippa on one side and Neptune with the trident on the other. And Caligula issues several coins like this. Next one, too. Yeah, I'm sorry this one's so bad. This is a lower quality photo of a lower value coin, but it looks pretty much the same as the previous ones. Okay. Now, I think probably the best known of these issues is this large first one you saw, probably planned by Augustus, but minted by Tiberius. And there's also this one here by Caligula. One notes that all these special anniversaries in Agrippa's career and life are the cause of special anniversary issues. And Agrippa is treated on these coins just like other emperors. For Tiberius' 50th anniversary and 100th anniversary of birth, and then for everybody who's not Caligula, they're going to mint celebratory coins of their accession, their birth, maybe even their death, and the accession of the next person. They do this for Agrippa, they do this for Augustus, they do this for Tiberius, skip Caligula, they do it for Claudius. They usually skip Nero, but not Trajan. And then they do it for Vespasian and Titus, and after that we're into a real late era. Okay. But the Flavians and the five good emperors followed this precedent with their own issues of Agrippa. And I think very few examples will suffice to make my point. On the 100th anniversary of Actium in 70, Vespasian also issued coins commemorating Actium, and then the next year, coins for the 100th anniversary of the conquest of Egypt, and the 125th anniversary of Actium, Domitian issued the next coin. This is Caligula's 50th. Go forwards. Yeah, okay, so here's Domitian's coin, and here again a familiar thing, Agrippa's face. I can barely see it because it's rubbed away, but there's the rostral crown. Okay, and here, although it's off-center, you again have Neptune and the trident and the dolphin in the hand. You know, and this is one is the one minted in 87, I think. Yeah, and it says SC Senatus Consulta, just like the others. After Domitian, you have Trajan and Hadrian, and Trajan mints a whole issues of every good emperor before him, and even some of the bad ones, on whatever is their 100th or the 125th, or whatever proper year anniversary he can come up with, he mints them. And Agrippa is in that series as a princeps. So, in conclusion, during his lifetime, Agrippa has proved himself invaluable to the regime, such that everybody regarded him as an emperor. Once Augustus decided to elevate him, Agrippa received exactly the sort of honors later emperors used for their heirs, because Agrippa is the precedent. These honors were also given to the partners of emperors. That is, Tiberius gives them to Drusus Minor, Vespasian gives them to his son Titus. So, in 13, Agrippa's status was full partner of Augustus. We're very, very close to it, much closer than anyone else with their emperor, except Titus and Vespasian are probably the same as Augustus and Agrippa, is my hunch. Okay. And we also know this from, of all places, Agrippa's funeral, the oration delivered by Augustus, which has survived on a papyrus in fragments. And I quote, this is Augustus talking. Having been considered worthy of the supreme height of power, and receiving tribunicum potestas, you became a colleague in our rule. By your own excellent qualities and accomplishments, for you surpassed all men. Many of these honors are preserved on coinage, and coinage alone, from which I assert that Agrippa really was an unofficial co-emperor in a regime that strove to deny its monarchical nature. The irony is that his status as secret co-emperor was never publicly stated as such for fear of Republican backlash, with the result that sometime after Agrippa died, posterity largely forget his ascent to equal power. Now, I would be happy to answer any questions if any of you have, or comments. So, yes, please.
Objects that are of living origin, like wood or flesh or whatever else, can be carbonated.
Mm-hmm.
Coins, which are mostly metal, either silver, brass,
Right.
that cannot.
Cannot.
How do you authenticate this? That is this an original, or is it a fabricated stuff?
Ah, okay.
The second thing is, if a coin belongs to 44 BC, in 44 BC, nobody knew what a BC and AD was.
Correct. I gave the years.
They date these things.
I gave the years to you in terminology which I thought you would understand. I thought if I said in the consulship of Munatius Plancus and Marcus Lepidus, probably none of you would know I meant 42 BC. So I gave them to you in real years. We date coins in a couple of ways, but the strongest and easiest way, very often the moneyer puts his name on the coin, which sometimes I showed out to you. And we have lists of what years those guys were moneyers. And that's how we know exactly what year they issued the coin. Now, when we actually get a coin in our possession, determining whether it's a forgery or a real coin, there are these numismatic experts who are capable of doing that. But if you get a ton of coins from different places that all have the same picture on them, they're all basically the same, they all look identical, except for maybe some of them are more rubbed down than others, you know that some of them are authentic. And determining the reliability of forgery versus genuine, that's a matter for the numismatic experts, which I can't personally do, but I believe them when they say it. But the dating is much easier because we simply know these three people were moneyed this year, they were followed the next year by these three, the next year by these three, because we have a list of it. So that's actually fairly straightforward.
You can also say that sometimes coins are found in an archaeological context, say under a collapsed brick building, and you've got the carbon dating if you want, and at least that the coin was dated before that time.
Yeah, they give you terminus dates. The coin is definitely no younger than this. No.
So even though a lot of official Roman history is written by historians and lost, there are enough documents that they know exactly which years different consuls have office and which years different moneyers.
Yeah, I don't know whether we have I don't believe we have a single list that goes from the founding of the Republic straight down, but I think we have several different lists that overlap, and therefore you can compose the whole list from it. Because I know I've seen in Smith's dictionary a list of every consul from 509 BC down to 476. So I know that they have it. No, it's 1,000 years. There's from 509 BC to 476 AD. So I know the list is intact.
Do you have any idea what the documentary evidence is? Is it actual scrolls that exist?
Livy actually says that he uses scrolls to do it. And Livy records every consul between 509 and something like 290 BC in his history. So we have that, with a gap for books 10 to 19, or 11 to 20, I guess. They used to put it up on the wall in stone, and there's a carved list, the Fasti Praenestini, which was carved in stone and unchangeable. And we hear other references about people carving the names of the Fasti in stone, and they had to go to great effort to remove Varro Murena when they did a Donatio Memoriae on him, because all over the world there's lists that had him as the consul the previous year, and they had to rub it out because they were so angry at him. And this is almost unprecedented. It's very rare that you rub out somebody's memory, but they were really mad at him. They do exist. David probably knows of other Fasti besides the one at the Fasti Praenestini, but we have a reliable, solid list of every consul from 510 or 509 down to the AD era. Do you know what the other lists are? I know there's the Fasti Praenestini. I don't know what the other ones are.
Can't think of any others.
Yeah.
I mean, some of those early lists are.
Well, they all have legendary names on them from before 400 BC. I mean, I don't know if those people were real people, but the Romans thought they were real people. Yeah. Yes.
Sometimes I wonder if determining whether Agrippa was an emperor or not an emperor is the same kind of debate you hear in astronomy about whether Pluto was really a planet. Of course, it would all be determined by your definition of what is an emperor. A lot of what our concern about what an emperor is post-classical. When some German warlord wants to call himself the Roman emperor, he tries to figure out what was an emperor. Among other things would be genealogy. And one problem, of course, Agrippa has is he's not of the family of Caesar. And every other emperor we can think of that we would consider part of the canonical line of emperor, somehow or another, sometimes I don't know how, managed to call themselves Caesar and get themselves adopted into that family. And of course, every other emperor that we think of as the canonical list had been given the title of Augustus by the Senate, so that some German warlord could say, okay, I've found some genealogists who will declare that I belong to the family of Caesar, and I found something I'll call a Senate that will declare me to be Augustus. I am now the Roman emperor. So that's one problem I see with calling Agrippa an emperor. Without those two things, the family of Caesar and the senatorial title of Augustus, it would be hard to make that claim, to folks today.
Okay, I think I can answer that rather straightforwardly. They weren't going to give him the title of Holy One, Sacred One, Augustus, because they've already given that title to somebody who's alive. And they don't give that title to two people who are living. And in fact, I think when Marcus Aurelius is emperor at the same time as Lucius Verus, I don't know what they call Lucius Verus, I just simply don't know. But when he dies, they certainly don't find someone else and call him Augustus. It's just Marcus Aurelius at that point. He gets as close to being a member of the family as he can by marrying Julia. And the real problem he faces, which is why snooty aristocrats won't respect him, is that he's not a born patrician. Okay, he gets patriciated by Augustus, who makes him a patrician by law, but he's just not a member of one of these old-fashioned class families. Now, for me, the question of the fact that he's emperor isn't a debate about is Pluto a planet or a wandering comet or something. It's something different. I think that making Agrippa an emperor in 13 totally changes the understanding of what Augustan politics are, because here you have somebody who is, in fact, a king, but he doesn't wear a crown. And if he tells everybody he's king, he is certain he will be assassinated for it, because that's what happened to his father, Julius. So he's not going to make that mistake twice. But he wields kingly power. And one of his ways of disproving that he's a king is by showing he's not a monarch, he's one of four. And the other three are Agrippa, a man whose talent made him supreme, I chose the best man in the state to be the second princeps, not somebody who's born into the richest man in Rome or something like this, but somebody who worked his way up because of his sheer talent. And the other two executives of state you elect because they're the consuls, and they change every year. And how much more Republican can it be to have two of the four heads of state be republicanly instead of democratically elected? And that's the new dynamic that I understand for this era, which is very different than what I had read in all the books during my college days and then Augustus was emperor and everybody knew it. Because here he is openly confronting the accusation of monarchy by proving there are three other people exercising what he pretends is equal power. But in reality, the two principes with the tribunician potestas have more power than either of the consuls with their consular imperium. But this is the bold lie that he puts forwards. Yeah.
With the appointment of Agrippa basically being the equivalent of emperor, as well as the adoption of both that he might have been trying to set up something like a dualistic empire
Yeah.
up until everybody died.
I've changed my thinking on the adoption of the sons. There actually is a passage where Dio says something which I think is wrong. Dio says he adopted those two intending to make them emperor from the moment he adopted them. Okay, I don't think that's the case. And I think if he had let that word get out, then all three of them would have been assassinated. Okay, so I think what he really planned up to the time beyond Agrippa's own death was they were going to be the heirs of all of his private wealth, and that he and Agrippa were going to rule, and he was going to worry about the sons when they were adults and make a decision then, not now. I think that if he risked saying these two youths are going to be the next emperors too openly, they would have been killed. And in fact, when he does put out a coin in 2 BC, when one's 18 and the other is 15, in which they're called Principes Viventes, and there's one of them has a litus and the other has a symbolum behind their heads, and it has a little bit of a monarchical tone to that coin. There's an assassination attempt on Augustus' life. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it's a provocation. So I think he had to be pretty careful, and every now and then he was too blunt about it, and what do you know, a conspiracy will arise as a result. So I don't think he was planning on making them emperors in the sense of, if he ever was planning it, he didn't tell anybody. And I think he really genuinely was planning to worry about it when they were adults rather than now. Of course, everything falls apart with Agrippa's death.
But it might look like that he was attempting to foster them.
Well, I think he really was just upset that he didn't have a son of his own. I think that was really what he was doing. Yeah. And he does things like teach them to write with his handwriting, and he teaches them to swim personally, and he teaches them to horseback ride personally. I think he's really enjoying fatherhood. And I think he has to be cautious. I think he actually goes overboard doing that stuff so that everybody will see he's trying to be a father to those kids and think that what he's missing is the fatherhood experience. He's 50 at this point, rather than grooming them for the succession. Now, Dio says he's grooming them for succession because in Dio's day, that's what emperors do with their children. And I think he's just backwards pushing, retroactively tarring Augustus with the same label as people like Septimius Severus and all the other dynasts alive. Now, that's what I see. Yes, please.
I enjoy your talking about the use of coins by later emperors to commemorate the anniversaries of things happening at the beginning of the imperial time. Did you go as far forward as Diocletian, where he really formally has the tetrarchy and looking for reminiscences on coins and written accounts of that? Or does the trail grow cold?
Actually, the trail begins to grow pretty cold after Trajan. And I don't know whether Diocletian issues any, 250 or 275th, or maybe it's even close to 300th anniversary things. I don't know if he does that, because when he steps down in 306, Agrippa had been dead for 19 years by then. I don't know if Diocletian mints any, because I haven't looked through his coinage. I went as far as Septimius Severus, and I didn't include in this one a fantastic coin that has Septimius's wife, whose name I think is Julia Mamia or something. I forgot her name. Julia something. Okay, and flanking her are Caracalla and Gita, and they are obviously children. Her head is much bigger than his. And my friend John Polini thinks that coin I showed you of Augustus, Julia, and Agrippa is really Gaius, Lucius, and Julia, as does almost the rest of the world. Okay, and he thinks that they're being displayed as adults because one day they'll be emperors, which I've just answered to you is not, I think, at all safe for Augustus to do. But that coin shows children, empress, and it's clear what's going on. They are groomed for the succession. But I think things are different 200 years later. It's a safe thing for Septimius Severus to say, I am the emperor. If I want to be a tyrant, you just have to take it. After Trajan, the trail grows pretty cold. And I haven't looked as far as Diocletian at all. I probably stopped with the Severans. I stopped at Alexander Severus. There might be later stuff, I just don't know it. So there, I'm unable to elaborate. But I'll look. I find your suggestion, I'll look. Yes.
You showed a coin, I guess, of Claudius, where on the front is Nero clearly identified, saying that he has gotten these 4 religious orders. You showed sort of a similar point, which you said you thought might relate to Agrippa having those same honors, but there's really no explicit mention of Agrippa on the coin.
Why do I think it?
Yeah, I guess I just have a feeling that if they were trying to put out a coin for a propaganda purpose, saying, hey, this guy is really something, he's got these 4 orders, they put his name on there, just like it was done with the young Nero.
Yeah, I also was troubled by that. So the first thing I thought was that it related to Augustus in some way. But why would anybody put out a coin that shows 4 years ago Augustus got adopted into these colleges again? And so that came out nowhere. I thought it was Agrippa because I was able to find out that he had been inducted into the Augural College because he had been given the triumph. And in order to get the triumph, you have to be fighting under your own auspices, not under you should be fighting under your own auspices, not someone else's. And that's one of the claims that Augustus makes when he stops letting other people have triumphs after 19. And he keeps being generous in the 30s, in the 20s actually, when he lets all these other people, including Cornelius Balbus and Statilius Taurus and Messala Corvinus and all these other guys, all Aruntius and so on, they all celebrate triumphs. And often, if they're not an augur themselves, and several of them are, then they're fighting under Augustus's command and auspices, and he lets them have the triumph anyway. Okay, but Agrippa is offered a triumph 3 times as late as 14, which means probably he's an augur by then. In fact, he's probably an augur by the time he was offered his second triumph, and turned that one down too. So then I knew, okay, he's an augur. I also know he's a quindecumvir because I know he presides at this festival, the Ludi Seculares. And I have this other coin which I think is him as a pontifex, and I know he's a pontifex on the Areopagus because he's in the Pontifical College, and he's the last guy, and he's wearing a veil. So now I have him in 3 colleges, and the 4th one, the holdout, is the same one that Augustus joined last. And that looks the same too. Why isn't Agrippa on the face of that coin? And I also find that troubling with you. But there are no other coins minted during his lifetime where he's on the face, except the ones from colonies like Nemausus, where he and Augustus are either back-to-back or face-to-face. There's no coin of just Agrippa on the head side, and some imagery about him on the reverse, until he's dead. So I'm troubled by that same thing as you, but, that other coin with Augustus, if we flip back on, it doesn't have Augustus's head on the obverse, it has some goddess. And on the other side, what it says is Caesar, either tribunicum potestas for this many years or consul this many years. I don't know which of the two. But on the face side of the Augustus coin that shows him getting in doesn't have Augustus's face on it either. And it could also be a coincidence. I could be wrong. But the face side of the coin that shows you getting into the college seems not to always have you on the face side. It's just strange. Right, yes, please.
Yeah, guys, this brings up the whole problematic notion of who was the audience for these coins. Who exactly determined what imagery would go on them? I mean, and again, sometimes we may be guilty of projecting a modern notion of the head of state approving these coin, whatever new coin types might appear. The royal money of bringing them over to King George, and he looks at it, he says, yes, that's a good likeness of me. Yes, I like Britannia, ruling the waves there. Okay, let's go with this for the new shilling or whatever. But in antiquity, the authority for printing, for making the coins were, of course, the moneyers, the triumviri monetales, and did they always take these ideas to whoever was the princeps at the time, and could this have been done on their own as a kind of flattery, or who knows what maneuvering was going on, whoever was in charge of them in that particular month. So we're real on really on shaky grounds as to who is authorizing these coins and who are they trying to flatter. I mean, the connection between the coin and whoever's in charge and maybe too busy to care.
Right.
You know, what's going on in the mint until someone complains. Have you seen the new coins? You know, and you see what I mean.
I think more often than not, the moneyers have much more power to put the image on the coin. A lot of them are indirectly selected by the throne, so they're not going to select really nasty people who hate the regime very often. Now, it happens a little, but not very often. I think that generally, if they're putting out images, there's a responsibility put on the moneyer to circulate information. It doesn't have to be propaganda, but information, such as the Ludus Seculares thing. That's information that has to be distributed. They're starting the games. Now, some of these coins actually have events that are from a whole year before. So there can be a lag of a month to a year on a coin. That is, a coin in 14 can discuss an incident in 15. Although actually, there don't mint any coins in Rome in 14. A coin in 13 can mention an event in the previous year, 14. There's a very loose control over what's put on the coin. I think somebody who's not Augustus says, that looks enough like him that you can mint that impression. That one doesn't look enough like him, you can't mint that one. But, you know, some of them barely look like him at all, and that's just the best guy they can hire to do it. So we're not going to do this twice, it just goes. I don't think there's a lot of imperial censorship on what you put on the coins, frankly. But I think there is an obligation that the triumviri have to accept to distribute information that is supposed to be made public. Oh, and as for the audience, you know, a lot of these are silver coins, a few of them are gold. They spread out. They mostly go through, you know, the equites, and out. The people that you most want to convince that Agrippa is really the next emperor are staunch, wealthy, angry Republicans, not paupers who aren't going to see silver coins. Okay, please.
In regards to Livia, I've noticed on the coins that he had a lot more control of what he wanted printed and how he wanted her portrayed due to her implied powers. Do you agree with me? I can't.
You know, he doesn't have to be the final arbiter because he can appoint somebody who knows the deal so well that that person can be the final arbiter. Livia is on surprisingly little coinage until Tiberius is adopted in AD 4. In fact, there's almost none of her. There may be 3 or 4 different coins that have Livia from before AD 4.
So you don't believe the ambiguous goddesses are Livia?
Usually not. I think a couple of them are Julia, and a couple of them might be Octavia. But I think very few of them are Livia until AD 4. And in fact, before that, I kind of riled up some of my professional acquaintances by telling them, look, you know, you think Livia is really important in 27 BC, 31 BC, 35 BC, 20 BC, 13 BC. You're not. You're not right. The record is totally the other way around. The person who was important was Octavia, up until the day she died. And then Julia, because she was Augustus' daughter. All the honors in the triumviral era go to Octavia, and then grudgingly, Livia is given equality some of the time. Livia never gets something first, and then Octavia afterwards. Octavia always gets it at the same time or first. And then down, you're going to see hardly ever any stuff about her between 27 and, you know, pretty much the fall of Julia, pretty much. And then after that, suddenly, boom, Livia goes way up. Okay. I don't think most of that stuff does ambiguous goddesses. I don't think most of them are Livia. I think some of them are just, you know, nose and mouth and not really anybody. But a few of them, a very few of them, one of them that I cut out and didn't include in this is very definitely Julia. And she's Julia as Diana. And she's got the quiver on her shoulder and I don't know what to call it. There's a piece of jewelry in her hair, which is completely Diana-esque. And it looks strikingly like a coin minted by Syracuse. But it's a Roman coin, and it's Julia. But most of the time, I think those are just some sort of ambiguous female face as the goddess, generally.
I had another coin question. You showed some coins which on the back had a sacrifice going on. You said it was a pig or a sow. 2 people were taking part in that sacrifice, which you thought could be Augustus and Agrippa. Is it possible that just when it comes time to sacrificing a pig, you really need two people there? Or were there coins in the future where there was just a single person presiding over the sacrifice of a pig?
I think it probably will depend upon why you're sacrificing the pig. Okay, if it's a peace ritual, it has to be two people because the two parties. I guess if there were four parties, there could be four people, but it's usually just two. So if it's a peace ritual, it has to be two. For the Quinn Decemviri, we hear specifically that for the event in 17, we hear that it's two people who do it there. Now there's another passage in Suetonius' Life of Claudius where Claudius by himself sacrifices a pig. And it's an important ritual that he does, and I don't really know why he does it, but he's fastidious to sacrifice a pig for those occasions. And it doesn't say whether anyone else does it with him. Now, I'm kind of guessing that the last year of his life when he's, he died in 54 and he was born in, I think, 10, so he's 64 years old. May have had somebody with him the last time he did it. Okay, I just don't know any better. May have always had somebody with him. But it's not clear that there are many different reasons you can sacrifice a pig. If it's for peace, it has to be two people. If it's for the Ludus Seculares, at every 110-year intervals, it has to be two people. Okay, but if there's some other reason, well, those are the only two pig sacrifices I know of a lot. So there might be other pig sacrifices with only one person, maybe. Yeah.
Well, I guess I was just wondering, is it possible that the sacrifice would show Augustus and this somebody happened to be a culprit, as opposed to Augustus and Agrippa?
I think then the other person would be a sacrificial attendant rather than decked out in a toga with over his head, is what I think. If they're just some sacrificial attendant and I know what they look like, most of them are bare-chested, they have a really big belt thing, and like a kilt that goes down to their knees, and they carry either a big axe and they whack the animal, or those look like full-fledged Romans. Those guys on those 3 coins. Usually, you don't sacrifice a pig. Usually, you sacrifice some other animal, a bull. I don't know if you ever sacrifice cows, but sheep. And occasionally, at the Veterelia, you do all 3. But most of the time, the animal of choice is going to be a bull. So it's a little bit, even this, I think it's pretty ritualistic if you're going to sacrifice a pig. It's almost always going to be 2 people, I bet. But I only know of 2 types of rituals in which you use pigs, and exclusively pigs.
Maybe we can go to the cookies and punch now.
Sure.
I'm sure you're going to answer more questions.
Gladly.
Thanks again for speaking.
It was my pleasure.